Hey, Junaid here. Today we'll create a poll just like the Twitter poll, and this is a UI. It has this area to display the question and the options that have been added or the choices for that poll. And anytime a user clicks this will disappear and the user sees this UI where are different percentages of answers or choices based on how many users selected what choice as a percentage here. Okay, so the poll is created using this form. So a poll has a question, so we can have maximum 5 choices and minimum 2 choices. Then this field allows us to add these choices. So when we click add a text here and click the plus button or add choice button, it will add the choice and allows us to delete it, or we can update it in place here. Okay, next we have a time that allows us to set a date and a time when we want to end that poll. That can be 5 minutes from now or a week from now. Then as soon as we are done adding our details, we click the save poll button. Let's discuss the structure for this app. So we will have a poll model which will have a question column and an ended at date time. So it will be a timestamp field. Then we have a choice model and it will have a text column that will be of type string and the poll ID this choice or this particular choice belongs to. Then finally we'll have a vote model. So this is not part of today's video. So eventually we'll have a votes table that allows us to display the overall result for our poll. So let's take a look at the markup. This is the question for our poll as we display it. Then each choice is a button, one choice, another, and another. Okay, so we will bind these to Livewire actions, and as soon as we click any button, that choice uh, ID will be stored in our database against this poll or against the user who clicked that button. Then we'll display the time, how many hours, days, or minutes are remaining for this poll to end. We actually don't need this button. Let's get rid of this. Because as soon as we click the button on any choice, the poll will be submitted. Then this UI will appear and this will go away. Then we have the progress, this part. So the same question that appeared here, but now we are just displaying the poll results. I have used a ULLI list to have them organized, but actually it is a bootstrap progress component. Okay, so the value will become controlled from its width. So if I say I want maybe some answer got 85% votes, so it will display as a, so it will be displayed as an 85% filled. Okay, these are just for machines to read or for accessibility purposes. Then we'll display each choice here. Okay, so this is a customization I did because the bootstrap component did it differently. Then next comes our form, which will be in our dashboard. So any users creating these polls will be logged in users, and on the other side, any person responding to these polls will be a logged in user. So we'll have uh, their ID as I showed you in the votes table. So that logged in user who voted for this poll chose this choice. So we'll have multiple and lot of votes against each poll and against each choice. But we'll have only one user who will respond to this poll. Okay, so one user can respond to one poll only. So this is the form, a simple input field takes a question. Then we have a option or a field to add choices. The text will be entered here, and as we click the add button, it will appear here. And we can have minimum of 2 choices and maximum of 5 choices. Then we have the poll ends date and time. This is a date field and this is a native time field. If you want, you can use a fancy date picker. This is the markup for each. This is input form group with label and its input. Then each choice is a li. So when we save these choices, this will be a list of choices. And the same input I've used here. The difference is this one's has a minus font awesome class, and this one, sorry, not this one, rather this one. It has a plus font awesome class so that we know this is for adding a choice and this one to remove one. Okay. So these are the error messages. So all the fields which require us to add some information. As soon as we click the save poll button, it will tell us to fill the required fields. So in this case, all the fields are required. So let's now move towards our component. So we'll start with this form and we will have 2 URLs, one for adding and one for editing. So let's first create our component. So let's open up the component view. And we'll extract all of this whole thing and paste it here. So we might get rid of this thing, this whole class rather. And we'll call it create poll. And before we can use it, we'll have to create the route. Let's open up the routes file. So we'll have route Livewire and we'll call it create. And our component is poll form. And we'll give it our name. And we can also tell it to use which layout. We have layouts folder, and inside that we have an app blade view. If we open the /create page, let's see if it works. So it works and definitely looks ugly. Let's improve it a bit. So we will wrap the whole thing inside a column. div.row div.col, and we'll use the colmd 4. So looks a bit better, but still needs improvement. We'll tell it to justify content center and why we have a scroll bar here. Is it using the layout or not? It is using it without actually telling it to. So let's add a container here to the parent div. Definitely better. So next, what we'll do, add properties for each field. So we'll start with the question. It will be a question field. Then we have a lot of choices or many choices. So we'll have a choices array. Then we will have a field for adding a new choice. So we'll call it text. Then for the poll ends date and time. So let's open up our poll form component. So we'll have a question. A list of choices. So this will be used for adding a choice. So we'll call it text. Then finally, we have ended at date as well as ended at time. So let's bind these properties to each field. Wire model equals question. Then add a choice field. We'll bind the text property here. So then we'll iterate through each choice and display this field. So we'll remove this. For each string choices as a choice. And for each so we will bind it similarly, but since we are inside a loop, we'll have to use a notation provided by Livewire, and which is wire model. So we have choices, and inside the choices, I want to have a text property or text child array that will hold the value for each choice. Let me show you an example. It will be like this: text choice 1, then choice 2, and so on. So to bind this text to this input, we'll have to do it like this: choices dot the index. For the first one it's 0, then dot, and the property that we are binding into. So since we are iterating to each item in the choices 0, 1, and so on, this will be replaced with the index. So in this case it's a loop. So this is provided by Laravel's Blade. It allows us to get the index of this loop. Okay, so index. So we have a couple of options already added. So if we refresh it, we should see these values here. Okay, so next we will do is since this is the first choice, it will be 1, this will be 2, and the next one that will be adding, it will be 3. So this is based on the index. Let's copy this and paste it here. So it will start from 0. Since it is an index, we'll just add 1 to actually tell the user that this is a choice 1. Then for the add option, it is always the last item plus 1. So this will be the size of the array. Choices and plus 1. Okay, so since we have 2 items, this will be the third item we'll be going to add. Okay, so if we have already 3 items, then the user will see choice 4 he's about to add. Okay, let's get rid of these all static data, and we'll end up with no items. Okay, then let's bind these two. and it is here. Wire model equals the name of the property, that is ended at date. So these are similar. We can copy and paste and change this date with time. Okay, so that's for the model binding. Now let's add these validations. So instead of typing all of this, let me just copy and paste. So this is regular Laravel stuff, nothing fancy here. Anytime we have an error for that field, we will display the message relevant to that field, and we'll just change its color to red so that it's prominent. So this is same way we are doing it here. Okay, then we'll replace these with the actual errors, and finally the date and time errors or validation messages. Okay, next we will bind this button to an action so that we can add items to the choices array. Okay, as soon as we hit the add button with the text, it will be appended here. Okay, let's define a method, public function add choice. So what it will do is takes this text and appends it to the choices. This dot choices, and at the end of this list add a new choice with the text. Okay, then as soon as we add this text to the choices, we want to empty out the field so that we can add more. Okay, let's give it a shot and see if it works. No, it won't work because we haven't bound the action to the button. Let's do that now. Where is it? So this is a loop. This is the button. Wire column click equals add choice. And now let's see if it works. It does. Okay, so we can add as many as we like, but as I said in the beginning, we'll allow minimum of 2 and maximum of 5 items. So let's define a new property, max choices, and that is 5. And we'll add a condition around the add choice button. Okay, so this will disappear as soon as we have added 5 items. If the size of choices is less than the maximum allowed, then we can add, and as soon as this is grown out of this size, it will not execute this block. Let's give it a shot. One added, two added, 3, 4, and now the fifth one. Yes, so these are all remove choice buttons. There's no more add button. So this is working great. Now let's add an action to remove each choice. Let's define a remove choice button, and we will remove each choice by their index. Okay, so this is the first one. It has an index 0. So when we click this action, remove choice, we'll have to pass the index for this choice 0. Remove choice 1, remove choice 2, and so on. Okay, let's add a method remove choice. So what's happening here is we'll get the item on that index and remove it. So as soon as we remove it, the index no longer exists. So we want to reset all the indices using the array values. Suppose we had 0 and then 1 and then 2. So suppose we passed 1 as the index. So unset will remove the first item and our counting will be 0, 2. So we want to reset by calling array values on our array. Okay, I hope you got this. So let's bind this to our delete action or delete button inside the loop. So where's the loop? So here's the loop, here's the button, wire click equals remove choice, and we'll pass the index. So we already have an index, we can copy and paste. Okay, so let's give it a shot. Add an item, remove an item, add an item, first one. So let's call it test and test 3. So this is test 2 and now add a test 4. Okay, let me remove test 3. So this is choice 3 which has a value test 3. So I'll remove this. What will happen? This will be gone and this will be called choice 3 which will have a value text 4. So that works. Yes. Now there's one problem. We can enter a text, that's okay, but we can also enter empty items, which is not okay. We can also have empty choices, and before we save this, we must validate this. So let's first validate this field, and we'll do it inside the add choice function or method. So this dot validate And what's the rule? The rule is the text field is required. Remember we added our validation message for each of the fields. So we have one for the text. Okay, so let's give it a shot and see if it works. I'm typing nothing and clicking the add button. There we go. Okay, so that works. Okay, now let's move towards the save poll button. So let's create a save method. And like we validated our add choice field, before we can save anything, so we have to validate this whole thing too. Each field will be validated before it is saved or updated. So let's call this dot validate, and we need rules. We can do the rules inline, but we can also have a variable and have them like this in an array. We can also get our rules from a private method as well. So if I add these rules here, our rules are a bit complicated, so it will make this function really messy. So I've created separate methods for these two parameters. The first one is rules. The second one is messages. Okay, so let me bring these two. So we'll make them private. I can say rules or get rules, and I'll explain them. But first, let's bring them here. And then we have so let me explain. These are regular Laravel validation stuff. So nothing too fancy here. So for the question field, we'll say it's required. For the end date, we'll say it's required and it should be a date. For the ended at time, we said it's required. Okay, this one, that date formatting didn't work for me, so I commented that out. But for now, it is being accepted as a string, but nothing to worry because the field itself cannot accept anything but formatted time. So all cool. Then we have the choices array, which again is required, but we have added two custom validations. First, for the length of it, because we don't want choices less than 2 or greater than 5. So we say anytime we have the length of these items, or we have two choices, uh, less than two choices, then we will fail the validation with this message. Then if we try to add more than 5 messages or choices, then we'll get this this message. Okay, then finally for each text field we are telling it that it is required. Like we already have this, but this is a separate issue because we are clicking this button, remove choice, and it is validating, sorry, not this one but this one. This is validating it on its own, but this time we are doing the validation for all the choices when we are submitting the form. Okay, next one is the messages. Let me just get messages. So anytime we see a required error or required validation error, Laravel interprets the fields and information using its own magic methods and display text. But I didn't like that text, so I'm using my own custom validation messages. So for the required field, I will display at least 2 choices are required. For the text field that has uh, left empty and you click the add button, I'd say choice cannot be empty. Then for the poll end date and end time, I'll say each one is required. Okay, let's now call these methods and use them. So let's call the rules this dot get rules and this dot get messages. So as soon as we click the save button, this will fire, and anytime there is a validation error, it will stop here and display the messages. So code after this validate message means that we are already validated and we are good to go. So let's bind this action to the submit button. To do that, we have to create a form. Let's add the form. Let's somewhere here. So we'll add it inside the column. Okay, form. Okay, so what will happen on submit? Wire submit. We want to save it. Okay, this will be called as soon as we click the submit button because it has a type submit. It can submit a form. Okay, so let's give it a shot. So I will add nothing and hit save poll, and looks like it's working. So the question field is required. So I add a message or a question. So this disappeared. Then now I will try to, so this is already showing that we must have at least 2 choices. So I will try to add a choice without a text and see if this works, because this has already worked. So, then I add a message. So now I have added 2 choices and click the save poll button and we don't see any error messages. Okay, so this one's good. And you can add your own validation for poll dates. We can't have polls from previous day or previous year or previous month if you are interested. So this PM and nothing happened, it means our all fields are validated now. So the next step is to create our models that we discussed earlier, and we'll create these models: poll, choice, and we'll not create the vote model as yet, but we'll create these 2. So let's start by creating the poll model. So this time I'm creating just the migration. We don't need a factory, but I suggest you create factory and migrations both, because it will help you generate dummy data most of the time when you are writing tests and stuff. So let's open up our migration. Polls table. So what we need for our poll, as we discussed, we need a question and ended at. timestamp ended at. So that is our polls migration. Now let's create the choice model. Now let's open up our choices migration. So what we need for our choices table, a text column, a poll ID column. So this will hold the polls text, and this will hold the relation with the poll. Okay, now let's run the migration. So now let's define the relationship between the poll and choice models. So polls have many choices. Return. So this has many choice class. Okay, and on the other hand, a choice belongs to a poll. Class. Okay, and one more thing while we are at it, let's tell our model that we have a date column so that it casts it to a carbon object or carbon instance. And also add the guarded field so that we don't get the mass assignment error while we are inserting or updating. We'll just add the ID column, and we'll add the same to the choice model. Now let's move towards our save action and try to create a new poll and its choices. So we have validated our form, and as soon as it's validated, we want to create a new poll model. And poll dot ended at equals this dot ended at date dot ended at time, and then We'll save the poll. So now that the poll is saved, what we will do now is create the choices. So poll choices, create many, and we'll pass the choices. Okay, so let's give it a shot and see if it works. So we'll have only 3 options. We can add 4th and 5th, but we don't want to. So this will expire next week at 12 a.m. Okay, so nothing happened. I suppose it worked, and it worked. So we have these options for choices, and we have the question. Okay, great. Next, let's make this poll editable. And to do that, first we have to create a route for that. Let's open up our route file and duplicate this one, and we'll call it edit, and we'll pass the poll here. So we'll accept the poll ID and we'll utilize the same form, and we'll call it edit. Okay, so if I open the page /edit/1, so the same form is displaying, but it's empty. So let's fix that. Let's open up our component and let's add a flag here to check for the form if it is being edited or we are creating a new one. So public is editing. By default, it's false. And now let's create the mount method. Since we are passing in a ID, it will be received from there. And we have to create a new property to hold the poll. Okay, we'll assign it only when we have a actual poll. So we'll check it by if poll has an ID, then set the is editing to true, and set the poll to this poll that's being edited. Okay, now what we'll do is the reverse of our save method. What we did there, we assigned values from the form to the model. Now that we are editing, we will retrieve values from the model and display it on the form. Okay, so this will be this dot question is equal to poll dot question. Okay, then this dot choices equals this dot poll dot choices, but this might not work. This will not work because this will return an object with a lot of fields. So we only want to bring the text field or text column and return it as an array. Okay, so we'll call map so we'll loop through each item in the choices table and get the text field only, and we'll create a new array and assign its value from the choice table or choice row. Okay, so that is just text, and we'll convert it to an array. Next, this dot ended at time equals this dot ended underscore at, and since this is a carbon instance, we can format it so that it gives us our desired date, which is year, month, day. And for the time, sorry, this one's date and this one's time, and we'll format it like h, hour, minute, and then the AM PM. Okay, let's give it a refresh and see if it works. Okay, property ended at. So what we did wrong here? Okay, so it's not this, it is poll. Okay, so we have the date and we don't have the time because there's a problem with the time field. I don't know. Let's fix this. Open up the poll dash form, and we'll have to add this value manually. I don't know if I remove this. Let's try it, but it won't work. No. So we have to pass in the value manually here, and we have to say this field. Okay, it didn't work. Ended at time. So let me just display it, what it shows. So 12 a.m. I think I have to change this to 24 hours. Maybe then it will work. Okay, let's do it. We don't need the HIS form. Okay. So what I did wrong was this is 24-hour format, and with the 24-hour format, as we know, we can't have 22:00 AM PM. We can't have this. Okay, this time is already telling that it's night. Okay, so that was my bad. Sorry. Okay, now this part is done. We are showing our fields. Everything is coming nicely. Now what's left is what happens when we click the save poll button. Let's inspect. So this will validate, this will create a new poll, assign the values and save it. So as we click this button, it will create a new poll instead of updating this one. So we'll have to fix that. So we'll add a condition here. If this dot is editing, so when we are editing, so poll will be from the URL we entered. Okay. So this will create a new object, but as soon as this sees that this is true, it will replace that with our poll that we brought from this URL. Okay, so it will pick this one. Okay, then after that, what it will do, it will create many choices. That's a problem. So what we'll do is we'll remove the choices it already has. Then assign it from our form. Okay, so now after we save, what we'll do, we'll redirect to some other page. Eventually it will be a poll page where we will display this poll, but for now let's redirect to the home page. And before I can proceed, let's update this so that we know that it worked. I'll update this to TikTok. Okay, so let's save it. And it's saved, I guess, and redirected. So let's check. So this is we didn't change anything in the poll table. We changed only in the choices table. So this is reflected here. Okay, this is working nicely. So yeah, that's it. Take care. Bye.